Today we're doing a start to finish StayFresh freeze dryer thing. So the first thing I always do is I clean my machine because honestly it's also the last thing I do, so they usually run back to back. Uh, so I'll start by cleaning it. I use the Clorox bleach wipes. I like to get it all disinfected and everything just to make sure no bacteria comes in from the previous run or anything like that. You want to make sure you get in between the trays. In this case, I had my previous batch I did better than bouillon, and I didn't think it had to be as thin as it should have because it expanded quite a bit. So it made quite a mess actually. I probably should have just taken this in the shower and hosed it off, but I didn't want to go through all that because I was filming a video and didn't realize it was so bad. Otherwise, yeah, I would have probably taken it in the shower and or in the kitchen even and hosed it down just to kind of save my hands that. And it's easy. There's three plugs in the back. Two of them are together, one's separate. The two that are together, what plugs that particular one into? The third one that's by itself, that one is for the sensor, which I broke mine, so you're not going to see that one in use. And then I also clean the rim, all that fun stuff. And after it dries, because the bleach evaporates pretty quickly, but once it dries, you can go ahead and put the food in and get started. This one is shredded chicken, some shredded beef, and three different types of cat food. The one on this tray, you see the big three little bumps, those are my homemade chicken cat food, which my cat actually prefers when it comes to freeze-dried foods. The other stuff she just won't eat. Thankfully, my other ones will, so it's not going to go to waste. But I blend it up, freeze it, and then freeze dry it, and then I blend it into a powder and put them in jars. And I was traveling, so I wanted to make sure I had plenty of food for her, and I still ended up having to buy her cans on the road because she's a pain in the butt to feed. I'm not gonna lie, she's a pain in the butt. She's ill, so she had to travel with us while the other two got to stay home. Alright, and just go ahead and close the door and everything. One of the first things you want to do when you start is you want to make sure the vacuum valve is closed. You want to make sure it's flush with the machine. And the other one is the drain valve on the right hand side. That also needs to be flushed with the machine. If either of those are open, you'll have some complications. If the vacuum valve is open, you won't get a proper vacuum. If the drain valve's open, you either won't get a proper vacuum, or if you have it draining into a bucket and you haven't emptied the bucket, it could put water into the machine, which I have done. So let's just always make sure that those are closed because it's not pretty. Thankfully, it didn't ruin my food because I didn't get high enough, but it still wasn't fun at all. Alright, so then all you have to do, it's very easy. Just hit the freeze drying button. This machine is very intimidating, but it's actually quite easy to use. Frozen food. I don't have the probe, so I don't do probe and use. I don't do candy because unless I make it myself, I'm not going to freeze dry it. That's just respectful. And so you can go ahead and hit the food in chamber if your food is in the chamber. If you want to just pre-freeze before you put the food in, then you don't put the food in chamber because that'll automatically trigger the next cycle if you do that. Here I'm going to mess with some of the settings. I can't show it to you very well. I was trying to, but it's just not coming up very well. But I'm going to change two things on my settings for this, which I'm going to have actually as my main settings is first thing I do is I change my temperature from 120 to 105. So it warms up and still does just fine, but it doesn't burn the food, and that has happened a few times. And then what I do is I'm also going to change, yeah, I just cannot get that screen in there. There we go. So you can change the time exceeds, all that stuff, the final dry. I did 13 hours because I have those really thick bags of food, and honestly 13 was not enough, but you know, for the first set it was. So I went ahead and let it run. It switches over to drying, everything like that. I caught this right when the machine had stopped, and you can't exactly set timers for these things, but I had caught it. I'd happened to heard it beep, so I didn't have to warm the trays. But if you do not catch the beep, what it will do is it'll actually start to cool down the chamber again. It'll start to go back into freeze mode. And if it does that and the food gets cold, you want to have to warm the trays because whenever you open this thing and you want to test the food, you want the trays to be warm. In this case, it just finished freeze drying, so the trays themselves were still warm. And I am fiddling with something and oh, I'm okay. So I open the vacuum valve to equalize the pressure, and while I'm there, I'm just gonna go ahead and start adding the filter things so I can filter the oil when this batch is done. Just kind of trying to keep busy. Okay. So this is first, it is the salmon. It's the salmon cat food. And what I'll do is I'll kind of feel it. And this one, when I first felt it, I felt that it was cold. So I'm going to try to break off as much of it as I can and break it up as much as I can so that when I put it back in, I have more surface space so that it can finish going all the way through. And it's really hard to try not to make a mess when you do this. But yeah, I'm feeling temperatures and that's just a really big chunk. And as you can tell, it takes a lot and I made a little bit of a mess. I'm not even gonna lie. And you can see that big frozen band right down the center. But I could feel it before I could even see it. But that's one thing I do. Some people weigh the trays. Um, that is not a practice that I do. Mostly I don't have I just don't do it. If that's what makes you feel comfortable, go ahead and weigh your trays. Once trays stop losing weight, then you know it's done, is how it's supposed to go. And then they just keep putting it back in. I can tell by the feel of it. And it's never had an issue for me. I just go in, I feel that it's if there's cold spots. That's why you want the trays and the food to be warm so you can feel those cold spots. That's why that's important. Otherwise, yeah, just sit there and just weigh the trays and keep going with that. And it might take a little bit longer if that's what you want to do. If that would makes you feel better, then go ahead and do that. So with these things, when they're not done, you want to kind of rotate the trays as well. I kind of shuffle stuff around and then I'll turn the trays backwards. Um, I'll switch different shelves. That way they just, you know, they can get different levels and different spots. And it's supposed to all be the same, but I do it anyways. Nene, I'm busy. No. Sorry, my cat is very in need of attention today. Actually, I have three, so they're pretty much always all in need of attention. These ones are also pretty frozen. Those break a little bit easier, but there's still parts in the tray that aren't as done. The thinner pieces kind of were able to finish when some of the thicker pieces weren't, like this piece in the back here. So that's where you turn the tray around. It's also so that I can put it in there and kind of mess with it without the tray falling all over the place. And so I'll break it up. I want to get as much surface area exposed as possible because it just makes the next part of the process that much easier and that much quicker. Sorry, this part is kind of boring to watch, but I wanted you to see where the mistakes happen and see how I can solve this issue so that you don't just see like a perfect batch and think everything's always perfect because that's not always the case. That's the case in many cases for me. But in these cases where I have liquid foods that are frozen and then put in really thick, there's a lot of issues with that. It was kind of the same when I was doing milk and I poured the milk directly into the trays and had the freeze dryer freeze it for me. That's just because trying to move around to put liquid items into a freezer. I did that with eggs as well. But trying to move around to put the liquid items in the freezer, they can spill and it's just a hassle. And then trying to get them level is just much easier to have the machine freeze them for me. So I got them broke up. And you can see a big batch. And I cleared off as much around that big frozen rim. That big frozen line. I cleared off as much as I could. And then here's the shredded chicken, which of course is done. Though this had been in the freezer for a while, so this particular batch just didn't come out good. And here's the chicken. I can feel that this is also cold. So, and again, I'll turn the trays around sometimes just so I can handle the things on the other side without there being any issues. And I'm actually about to be doing another huge batch of cat food pretty soon because my cat likes this one. She actually likes the homemade cat food that's freeze-dried and reconstituted, and she'll scarf it down. But she doesn't really so much like the freeze-dried canned food. I have no idea why. And I apologize for all the noises that may happen in the background because my phone's going crazy. My cat's going crazy. So then I went ahead and broke it up like I mentioned to do. And then check the chicken, of course. Chicken, the shredded chickens and stuff like that. There's so many open spaces on those things. They freeze dry really fast. So usually I just go with standard settings for things like that. And there's never any problems. They're done by the time I go to pull them out. But I still, as you can tell, I'll still come in and feel the temperature, make sure there's no cold spots. That's just my method of how I do it. Everybody has methods on how they do it. As long as it gets done, it's really not a wrong method, to be honest. So you have to find which method works for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the beef up here with the chicken. Since the beef and the chicken are both done, they don't need to stay in the machine. Um, I mean, what's the point? If they're already done, you can go ahead and remove them. I don't really think it makes a difference if they stay or go, but it's just they have to reheat and then keep freezing, and it can eventually start to deteriorate the quality. So I pull things out as soon as they are done and then start it up again. So here there was actually it took 3 tries to get the canned cat foods done, those particular ones. And here you can see where I'm redoing the shelves, but it took 3 tries. This particular one was done the next batch, so I went ahead and pulled it out. But I went ahead and edited out that particular run of it because there was no point in showing you the same thing over and over because that was a really long stretch of me rambling on about nothing that you don't need to listen to. Okay, well, a lot of it was kind of important information, but it's still a lot of rambling. And then, of course, when you open the vacuum, sometimes it'll blow some of the dust and stuff around. So just to make sure that I have a nice clean seal again, I'll go ahead and wipe some of that dust off with another wipe. And then I always pull that out just a little bit just to kind of help with my seal. Because sometimes when you can't quite obtain a vacuum, it's honestly because that's not getting a good seal. So I'll pull it out slightly and it actually holds better. I don't understand that. Make sure you reclose the valve. And I'm sorry, I look like absolute trash and I'm covered in cat hair and it's been a week. Don't ask. So we're gonna go and put it back in and return to final dry. And then basically adding more hours onto how many more final dry hours I'm gonna go through. I have no idea how much I put because I can't see the screen. So just insert random number here. And here's where we're back again. It is finished again. You can see one of the trays is missing. That's the other cat food that finished the other batch that got edited out. And this time this whole thing is done. So you can go ahead and feel yeah. I'm feeling where I knew was still, wasn't done the last time, and I can tell that they're dry. And then you pull them out. I don't even know why I showed closing the chamber because that's really not even something I actually do usually. So another thing that they gave us with the freeze dryer was an air hose, an air pump. And you just go ahead and end this session here. And I didn't know what it was until recently. Apparently the air pump is so that you can clean out the drain hose if water gets stuck. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Never even thought to use that because my drain just drains right into a bucket. So you want to make sure the vacuum or the vacuum's open. Make sure the drain is open because there's no point in defrosting it without the drain being open. because otherwise it just builds up in the machine, eventually pours out the door, and it's a mess. So, and here's where I open the door. I usually leave it open and I'll start to defrost it, and I let mine defrost for 5 hours. Don't forget, if you're liking these videos, to like, share, and subscribe. And also you can ring the bell for notifications and it'll let you know right when a new video launches. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe right here. And also, if you want to see all the videos that you have missed so far, you can click right here. There's the fan. You can click right here and it'll send you to my videos in order playlist. You can watch them all as I drop them. And we'll see you next time. Bye guys.